Thank you, guys. Hey, you said we have a prestigious person speaking. I looked around and I said, oh, we have a guest speaker? Who's that? Okay. So I'm just one of you. I've been asked and given the privilege of being up here. Okay. We are all to proclaim the gospel. I'm just standing before you today leading us through a section here. And if you have a Bible or your phones, if you would go to John 4, that's what we're going to be looking at today. We're going to take a look at the woman in the well in a different way. And I always encourage people not only read the words, think about the words, drill down deep. So from childhood age, we know the kiddie Bible story about the woman at the well, right? Okay, but there's a lot in there. It's deep. It's deep, and so we're gonna read through it today. So can we show? And I'm going to start before we get into the maps. It says when you look at John 1 through 4 and 1 through 3, and we don't have that. It's kind of a lead-in. It says Jesus, because when we look at the word, we want to know what was happening before what we're studying and what is happening afterwards, because that puts it in context. There's a place in the Bible that says God will gather us under His wings. Okay, does that mean God literally has wings? Is He a giant chicken? No. You have to know the context of what's being talked about, okay? So Jesus has been, and John have been converting people and so forth, and the Pharisees and the Sadducees started keeping score. How many people did John baptize? How many did Jesus and His apostles baptize? Kind of like a football game or something. They were trying to figure out what this score was. And so Jesus realizes that. It says Jesus realized the Pharisees were keeping count of the baptisms that he and John performed. And then parentheses, although his disciples, not Jesus, did the actual baptizing. They had posted the score that Jesus was ahead, turning him and John into rivals in the eyes of the people. So Jesus left the Judean countryside and went back to Galilee. Okay? So now if we can, and when you look at that, if we can see the first map and the second map, whichever one comes up here first here. Okay, so this is Samaria. Okay, here's Galilee, and here's Judea. Now, these are about the size of New Mexican counties. Okay, I was going to say they were states, but they're about the size of New Mexican counties. But if you're walking across our counties is a pretty serious task, okay? So where is Jesus? So Jesus is down here in Judea, okay, and he's going up to Galilee, and here's Samaria. Now we're going to talk about it in detail, but Samaria was like bad guys to the Orthodox Jews, and we'll talk about why in a minute. So they didn't even like to interact with them, much less walk through them. So what they would do is they would go along the river and like cross the river or just go along the edge here and go up and go that way. So Jesus says, no, we're going to go through Samaria. And his apostles even go, what? Okay, so it's good for us to kind of have a visual of know what's going on. Okay, and if we can see the other map. So Syria was part of the Assyrian Empire. And it was interesting when you look at how much the Assyrians basically controlled at their peak. Okay, they had all the important parts of Egypt. They go all the way up through Israel. They had Syria. They go up, they're all up in here into Turkey. They're coming into the Middle East. They go down and control the top of the Persian Gulf. Okay, this was they were the superpower of their day. Okay. So when we talk about Samaria came from this. The Assyrians, when they took over an area, would take part of the population out and put them in other parts of their country so that it kind of broke up their power belt, okay, and assimilated them in. Plus they took other people and said, hey, we'll give you incentive to move in. So they forced other people in. Very much kind of like if you think of like Gaza, okay, in that area over there, people in, people out, it's your territory, no, it's not, and everything. So they took that area and they put other people in. So now if we can go back to the other map again, please. Okay, so the Samaritans stayed when there were 5 different groups that that were part of the Assyrian, 5 different power groups that helped run the Assyrians. So they ran the Sumerian area, and they actually had all this. But as they pulled out and lost power, Samaria was the area that had mixed with the enemy the most. They'd put more people in, they'd intermarried, there were very few Jews, but these were people, the core people were Jewish, okay, but they had mixed with the Assyrians that had been come in. And the last group that had them, as they were losing power and the Assyrians were falling back, they adopted the Greek belief. So for 200 years, they took these people who were mixed and said, you're gonna worship the Greek gods, you're gonna learn Greek and everything else. So to the Jews, these people were absolute apostates. Okay, they were people they had hated. And the Sumerians had been there when the last group had been fighting against the Jews and trying to wipe them out. The Sumerians had sided with the enemy. So they were traitors, they were apostates. I mean, they hated each other, even though they had to live next to each other. Again, can you kind of get it from our mindset? Gaza and Israel? Okay, that's kind of what's going on here, all right, with that. So that's why they went around and didn't even want to talk to these people. They as a whole, hated each other, okay? So now we get to the word, and if we can pull that up. And what version did you get? ESV? Okay, let me change that one just a second here. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to read this way just because it's easier to look down, so if we can do that. So starting at 4, and he had to pass through Samaria. It wasn't that they had to pass through Samaria. It said Jesus had to pass through Samaria. Do you get that? He had to. That was his calling. That's where he was going. Okay, so the apostles go, no, we're not going there. Jesus goes, yes, we are. Okay? Let me see. A second. Wait a minute. Let me find where I'm at here. He had to pass through Samaria. So he came to a town of Samaria called Sychar, near the field that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Joseph's wells were there. A well, singular, was there. Okay, so we're reading Genesis. Do you remember they were talking about all the wells? You're reading Genesis and you kind of go like, who cares about the wells? Okay, you need to know about the wells because then God builds on that with his word. The history builds on it. So we go, aha, yeah, I remember when they did those wells, and it was kind of an important thing. So the word set that up for us to see it here, okay? Jacob's well was there. So Jesus, wearied as he was from his journey, was sitting beside the well. It was in about the 6th hour, which means kind of midday-ish time, okay, when the sun's up high. So the other thing we see here is Jesus was full man and full God. As full man, he was tired. He had been ministering, he'd been baptizing, he'd been walking around. He took a long journey. He comes here and he goes, man, I'm beat. And he sits down by the well. Okay, so we see the man side of him there. It says in the word that he was like us in all ways and yet knew no sin. Okay, so it was the 6th hour. A woman from Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, give me a drink. First of all, she is an apostate. She's a heathen. She's a Samaritan. And guess what? Jesus is there waiting for her. That's a message for us. I could drop the mic right there and say, there you go. There's the message. Jesus was waiting for you. If you haven't talked to him yet, you need to. Okay? He is there for you. He was there ahead of her. She didn't get there and go, oh, I wish there was a holy man. He was there waiting for her. The word says, I stand at the door and knock. Okay? You just have to let him in. Okay? And he does that out of respect. It isn't that he couldn't blow the door off the hinges. Okay? He does it out of respect because he wants us to love him. okay, not to be robots that he forced into like a slavery type thing, okay? And he says, give me a drink. For his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. So first of all, the disciples leave Jesus alone. What's with that? Okay? Somebody couldn't have stayed back and said, hey, we'll hang out with you, Jesus? Okay? But anyway, so they go to get food. The Samaritan woman said to him, how is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a woman of Samaria? So she absolutely knows what's going on. It isn't like she says, oh, okay, yeah, cool, nice to meet you. She knows that she shouldn't be talking to him. So she also classifies him as, you are a Jew, okay, and I am a Samaritan. She does that. She says, I am a woman, you are a man, okay? And in those days, men and women did not meet without having other people around, much less Jewish women Samaritan women and Jewish men, okay? I mean, there's just so much wrong here that shouldn't happen by society's standards, okay? God is breaking that, and we need to realize that God breaks standards, okay? I heard Evie Hill say one time that he had people complain that the people in the back of the church sometimes smelled like alcohol or were falling asleep because they were half loaded. Thank God they were there. Okay, God breaks those standards, right? That's what he's saying here, okay? And then Jesus answered her, if you knew the gift of God and who it was that was saying this to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water, okay? Okay? So think about that. Aren't we all thirsty for something? I mean, first of all, if you get thirsty, man, water is something you'll do just about anything to get, right? Okay? But aren't we thirsty for something? Don't our souls thirst for something? Okay, God's the only one that can truly give us a living water that'll quench that. Okay? So in my younger days, I did the parties, I did the booze, I did the drugs. Guess what? They're empty. Okay? All they do is they take your money, they take your friends, they make you into something you really don't want to be. Okay? So younger people, you don't have to follow that. We've done it. Okay? It doesn't work. Okay? Do other things that are more productive. And then it says, where do you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob? Okay, think about that. He is. Okay? Huh? He gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did his sons and his livestock. Jesus said to her, everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks of the water that I will give him will never be thirsty again. The water that I will give him will become a spring of living water welling up to eternal life. So God fills you, and he not only fills you, he fills you to overflowing. Okay? So sometimes we say, okay, God, I don't feel that. It's there. We need to find it. We need to accept it. This isn't a maybe. There isn't a question mark at the end of that. He says, I will do this. Okay? But you know what? Sometimes the water in your house doesn't run till you turn the faucet on. Doesn't mean the water's not there. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the lines. It means you have the water turned off. Okay? So we have to reach up and turn the water on too. All right? Jesus said to her, go call your husband to come here. The woman answered him, I have no husband. Jesus said to her, you are right in saying I have no husband, for you have had 5 husbands, and the one you now have is not your husband. What you have said is true. So she could have lied to him when he said, hey, go get your husband. She could have said, yeah, I'll be back in 15 minutes. You just hang out here. She could have said, okay, yeah, I'll go get him and go find the guy she's living with. Say, hey, come back and do this, okay? But she told him the truth. You think he didn't know the truth? You think he didn't know when he said, go get your husband, that she didn't have a husband? He knew all that, okay? He's kind of seeing where is her heart at, okay? The woman said to him, sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. So here she is, heathen woman. Jesus meets her, talks to her, and she says, I perceive that you have religious power. Okay, this is a non-believer. Remember, the Jews at this time are trying to trick him. Okay, figure out who he is. Tried to take the power away from him. This is a heathen woman. And she's saying that. She says, "Sir, I perceive you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you say that in Jerusalem is a place where people ought to worship." Jerusalem is where the Jewish temple was, and the Samaritans had to build their own secondary temple because the Jews would not let them go to Jerusalem and would not let them in the temple. So that's kind of what that references to, okay? Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when neither on the mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews," okay? And as Christians, we are grafted Jews. That's why we read the Old Testament. We read the Old Testament because those were the 5 books. Their 5 books, our 5 books, and believe it or not, even the Islamic books are based on those early patriarchs of what's going on. So all religion, all Judeo-Christian religion goes back to there. But the hour is coming and now when the worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father is seeking such people to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him will worship in spirit and truth. The woman said to him, "I know that Messiah is coming, he who is called Christ." Okay, here's a non-believer that says, "I know the Messiah is coming, and it's the Christ." Okay, did the Jews know that? They knew it. Okay, but she's supposedly a heathen with Greek stuff mixed in, and yet she's nailing it. Her doctrine is better than some of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Okay, so, and do we know that? Do the people on the street know it? They know it. They know that. Did the devil know it? The devil knows it. Okay, when he encountered spirits, they said, "Why have you come to you got the wrong word, but oppress us," okay? Because they knew who he was. Jesus said to her, so she says, "One is coming who is the Messiah, who is the Christ, and he will tell us all things." Jesus said to her, "I who speak to you am he." Okay, this is the first time he says, "I am the Messiah." First time. Who's he declare it to? Does he call the Sadducees and Pharisees together and do it? Does he go to the temple and do it? Does he call his disciples together and say, "Hey guys, I want to tell you something"? He says it to a non-believer the first time. That's because Jesus' heart is to save the unsaved. Okay, that's who it is. So he says it to her. And first time he says that, and he says it to a non-believing woman, okay? It's not that she's a woman, that's an analogy of he went to, if the Jews had gotten together and taken a chalkboard and written down things like, who is the most undeserving to ever meet the Messiah, it would come out to be her, okay? So it isn't that she's a woman, it's that Jesus is reaching out to the undeserving by man's standards first. Okay, that's a lot. Okay, I can remember saying, "Yeah, I get what they're talking about, but I'm not worthy." That's the whole point. We aren't worthy. That's why Jesus made it a gift, why we don't have to earn it. We can't earn it. Okay, then it says, just then his disciples came back. They marveled that he was talking to a woman. Okay, marveled is a nice word. Some of the translations say they were shocked, okay, that he was talking to a woman, much less a Samaritan woman. Just a second. Talking to a woman, but no one said, "What do you seek?" or "Why are you talking to her?" So the woman left her water jar and went away into town and said to the people, "Come see a man who told me all that I have ever done, or I ever did. Can this be the Christ?" They went out of the town and were coming to him. So she's an unbeliever. He talks to her about living water. Okay, he offers it to her, and then he says, "I'm the Messiah," and she goes out. So she's the first evangelist for the Messiah. first one that he says I'm the Messiah to, and she's the first evangelist, a woman. Wait a minute, some religions say women can't be pastors and, they can run child care and all that and everything. What the word's telling me right here, okay? So she's the first evangelist, okay? Meanwhile, disciple, and here's the other thing. So she runs into town, and she doesn't have all kinds of doctrine. She goes in and goes, you got to come see this guy. You got to see what he's done to me. You got to see what this guy is saying. Our lives are our witness, okay? Your mess is part of your message, okay? When you say, I'm a sinner saved by grace, okay? I should not be here, and I'm here. That is a message to the world. You don't have to be able to debate people into being a Christian. You need to love them into it. Okay? It says, meanwhile, disciples were urging him, saying, Rabbi, eat. But he said to them, I have food to eat that you do not know about. Okay? So then we're getting on, that's into the next section. So the following after that, so he talks about drinking. Next he talks about eating, and he talks about harvesting. And one of the things he says is because this woman accepted and she's got the whole town stirred up, okay, you can harvest here. You didn't plant, you didn't sow, but you can harvest here because of what other people have done. So to me that also says when we talk to people, some of us plow the ground, some of us pick up the rocks and sticks and things that are there, some of us take care of the ground and water it, some of us plant seeds, some of us tend the weeds and everything. So when you talk to somebody, you say, I don't know, I talk to people about Jesus, but nobody's ever said, yeah, I want Jesus. If you're planting seeds like Johnny Appleseed, somebody's going to see apple trees, okay? May not be you. But think about it when you get to heaven, how exciting it's going to be when somebody comes up to you and says, hey, I wanted to meet you and thanks. For what? You talked to my grandmother who was down on Zuni on one of her worst days when she was going to kill herself. And she didn't because you took a moment to say hello to her and tell her she was okay and God loved her, okay? And because of that, she and my entire family are God worshipers and love Jesus, okay? That'll be up there for us. It's going to be amazing what happens out there. So we need to keep going. Anyway, so I want to finish with that part of it, okay? And just let you know that Jesus is there for you. He is looking for you. He is waiting at your well, wherever that is, okay? Take the time to talk to him. The other thing is she left her pots and ran into town, okay? And everything indicates that the pot was, valuable in those days to people. And she left it and ran into town. The other thing is she was divorced from 5 different men and was living with another one. In those days, a man could divorce his woman, his wife, for cooking the meal wrong, okay? So she could have been tragically divorced for any number of reasons. And if she'd been thrown out 2 or 3 times, maybe it was easier for somebody to throw her out the 4th time and the 5th time, and now she was going, forget it, I'm just living with this dude, okay? So that's one thing. It could have been that way. The other thing is, in the Jewish days, if your husband got killed, the brother was supposed to take you in as his wife. And if that brother got killed, then the next brother was supposed to take you. It doesn't say how she got these 5 husbands, but it could be that that was what happened, that some of that was, her husband had been killed and somebody else came in and took her, that she had to join that part of the family. Now, let's just be honest, right? How would you like it if something happened and all of a sudden your husband had somebody else's wife is now part of your family? Okay, that probably wasn't a great situation for, at least in all those cases, right? And then the last one that most people assume is that she was promiscuous, and that's what did it, okay? Because the Jewish law said the only reason, there were 2 schools of thought. The conservative school said you could only divorce your wife if she was adulterous. And that's where we read about the things like the stoning of the adulterous woman, which I find very interesting. Where was the man that she was doing it with? Why wasn't he there too? Okay, Anyway, and Jesus saved her too, right? Said, those who are among you without sin cast the first stone, and everybody walked away. Okay, So there's lots of reasons why she's there. The other thing is everybody knows about the woman at the well. Nobody knows her name. Why do you think that is? Okay? I tell you why. Because it's more important that we know who Jesus is. We just need to know her character. And her character was good. Okay? Our character needs to be good. Don't worry about your reputation. Worry about your character. Okay? Your reputation is what other people think of you. Your character is who you really are. And we want to be Jesus freaks. That's what we want to be. Anyway, so I'm going to close this part up. I pray that that spoke to you. And Mary Lou's going to do the Bible in 10. And yeah, if she would come up and do that. And then